Okay, good morning. Well, committee, members of the public, welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. I'd like to confirm that all members are present and we do have quorum. For those in the audience, just a note that we still operate in a hybrid setting. So there are members of council that are sitting around this table and staff that are sitting around this table or in this room today. And we still continue to have people that are online as well. So you'll see people joining us or asking questions from the screen for those in the audience, and or members of staff will be presenting today. So I'd also like to confirm that our CAO, clerk, and members of the senior management team and staff are here and present. I'd like to advise that and continue to encourage the public that if you have input, to provide it to TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca. And I'll note that there was none received for this agenda today. Reminder, today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. I'd like to, there was no supplementary agenda issued today. And at this point, would like to ask committee if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Okay, Councillor Bosemworth.
I have
your mic, please.
Thank you. I have a pecuniary interest in 10D, I think it is. 10B, sorry.
10B. Okay, thank you.
The community grant program.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing that. Thank you very much, Councillor Bosemworth. And just before we get into today's agenda, I'd like to take a moment to welcome a new staff member, Mr. Nick Colucci. Did I get that correct? Okay. I'm welcoming Nick to the position of Director of Operational Services. Nick has a long good experience in his back pocket to bring to us here in the township. We are very fortunate for that. He has 15 years of municipal leadership, as well as a rich background in the private sector. So welcome, Nick. We look forward to working with you, and welcome to your first meeting. Thank you. And at this point, I am going to move on to item 4A, which is a delegation. I'd like to welcome to the podium Mr. Edgar Olsen and Mr. Ken Reese. I'm not sure if you're both coming or if one of you. Could somebody help him with the mic, please? You just have to turn the mic on, Mr. Oh, okay. Thank you, Miss. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thank you.
Would you be able to project a map on the wall?
Of course. So Mr. Reese, just as a reminder, as we discussed,
Yes.
Mr. Reese will have 5 minutes to walk us through his presentation today, committee. And at that point, we will have questions.
Yes.
Well,
thank you for talk to you this little project. This proposal lays out a cluster of 4 possible trails in what we believe is all Crown land in Watt and Cardwell Township and adjacent to Skeleton Lake and Bent River. So that's the area we're talking about. It will add trails to the existing 10 trails that the township, I believe the township has 10 already that are established, and we're going to take our trails off the existing Weir Lake. This plan has been one of Ed Olsen's dreams for a long time, and my role has been able to put the thing on paper for Ed. Just who we are. Ed Olsen's a 4th generation pioneer family that took land in Ullswater in 1860s as free land grant settlers. Rasmus and Gunnold Olsen acquired by 1870s 6 lots that were on the old Muskoka Road and Smillian Bay. And subsequent Olsens have made possible the development of lands for a summer Camp Quassen and numerous cottage lots. And in the meantime, they provided support to all the summer adventures that came through. It still maintains part of the Olsen lands and has a continuing interest in his Ullswater and lake community. And for a decade, he hosted annual family days for the Skeleton Lake children and families. This is how I met Ed. And during our socializing, he often mentioned this block of land, crown land near the lake that could be used for trails. So here we are today. I'm Ken Reese, cottager in Skeleton Lake near Wilson's Lodge. My wife's parents, one of the early groups to build on the lake, a group of 8 high school teachers who bought a block of land from Bill Wilson in 1932. So my contribution to this project has been to put Ed's thoughts on this map. And I was able last fall to meet ward councillors, Alan and Peter, who gave us the encouragement to come here today. This plan is conceptual. It's lines on a map. Neither Ed or I are any longer able to walk the area to confirm any location. Ed has used his general knowledge of the area, and these proposed trails, for the most part, lay on vacant and undeveloped forest land, but do tie into a few existing roads and trails. The 4 trails are centered on lakes. They cross the typical wrench and shield forested terrain. And as far as we know, they lay on crown land, except for a couple of minor crossings. My little pointer isn't going to work, but and Trail B takes off on Rear Lake, continues and comes down through another lake, and comes out on High Lake. The third one is continues on and comes down through Little Long Lake, gets around the Scotty Slops, and comes out on the High Lake Road. And then the 4th one comes down the other side of the lake, extending over to a scenic area on Long Lake, Long Bay, Big Rock there.
Councillor Kent, who is online, just to let you know, Mr. Reese was just walking to the screen and showing us 4 possible trail locations on this map. Okay? Thank you.
These are long trails. They're 5-6 kilometers long. Each of the 4 trails would open up what we describe as backcountry. Each, well, I said they're a few kilometers in length. And we're not able to confirm a final location because of our physical condition, nor do we know what the thing will cost. So it's at this point, it's just a proposal. These tasks will require a skilled trail planner. Well, we cannot physically participate. Ed and I can assist the township staff in planning and construction with any part of the proposal that the township might accept. And our role might be in recruiting any volunteers that are required. So just to conclude, there are 2 existing trails in the Skeleton Lake area, which are well done and well used. This proposed trail cluster would make a significant contribution to the existing township trail system and to the existing outdoor activities in the township area. It's been a dream of Ed's for some time. It would be a tribute to the historic Olsen family if this could become a reality. So this concludes our presentation, and thank you very much.
Well,
We're pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Reese. So committee, just this is a point for questions of the delegation today. And as noted, we will talk about this a little bit further in today's agenda. So at this point, are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Edwards. This is question period now. So I think I saw Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, I'm happy to hear from him if
If you
that's,
have you can ask him to hear.
well, sorry, through you to Mr. Olsen, did you wish to speak?
No, I come down to question.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
If I
So,
can.
my question would be, I've looked at this since it was first introduced to us a month ago or so. And my biggest concern is the ATVs. So when we open up trails, for hiking, the two don't mix. And I'm not clear how this is all gonna work out, I guess. And I'm not sure if it's more of a staff question. But it is a concern. So for instance, I've been on our Trails Committee for too many years, I guess, but that was one of the biggest things when we opened up, like, for instance, even Hardy Lake and the Torrance Barrens and things, about the existing uses that were allowed on Crown land and how we can mitigate. And so if I use the Torrance Barrens as an example, the province still allowed ATVs and still allowed the historic hunting grounds and all of those sort of things. And I'm just not sure how that's all going to play out, or if that was considered.
There's a few rock faces. And if you have a trail up a steep rock, and then a few ATVs. And also a lot of mud space in the country,
Thank you.
just to walk and pass on it.
Thank you.
We eliminate a few, and we probably can't eliminate them all.
I understand your concern when you open these things up, it's who's going to use them. And they have the same problem in York County and York Region and their trail systems. Of course, much higher traffic. And they have trails for horses. They have trails for wheelchairs. They've got trails for walking. Yeah. So it's a problem how you build a trail is who can use it. Yes, quite right.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any other questions? Would you, a supplemental?
Sorry, thank you. I actually I'm going to just leave this as a question for staff
Okay.
to look into, because I think that whole question of what the province is going to allow
Yes.
is a much bigger consideration. And although I love this initiative, but I that's my outstanding issue, because I've just been involved with them too many times to not always get the right outcome. So I just wondered if staff could look into that.
Yes, I agree. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. I see there's an ATV trail marked in there. Is that existing, is it?
It's the one up the.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes out of the road on the back of the road.
Okay,
Take a TV, but it's gonna be cheaper.
okay, thank
Up
you.
the side of Barnes Lake.
First of all, I guess I'd like to thank you for all your hard work on this. I think it's great if we could bring something like this through. I'd like to see staff do a report on this. We'd have to check with the province, see if we can use the Crown land and everything else like that. But I think there's so many hiking trails all over Canada and even the United States that people are using, that it could be a draw for people who want to hike the trail. So I would support it. Hopefully, and that we can start with one and then work from there each year or something like that. So thank you for your efforts on this.
Okay, are there any questions? Councillor Glen?
Thank you. And through you, I'm going to just add to the staff to take a look at hunting. I'm a hiker. I've hiked these trails, and I can tell you in the fall, it's really, really unnerving at this particular place. It's a place we will no longer hike in the fall.
Mhm.
The hunting is close, and I'd just like for public safety that staff take a really good hard look at that. But I do applaud this. It'd be fun to have more hiking trails up there.
Okay, are there any questions for our delegate? No? Okay. I think Mr. Moore is sitting back there. He has been listening, but we will have a further discussion a little bit today on today's agenda about this topic. Thank you both very much. I know that
Thank you.
there's a lot of interest, so thank you. Seven A, Mr. Moore, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. Today's report is in regards to the renewal of the lease agreement with the West Muskoka Food Bank, the Glen Orchard Community Center. The current lease agreement comes to an end at the end of June of this year. Staticky. The food bank has occupied the building since 2016 for this use. And since 2018, they've had exclusive use of the whole building for their operations. The lease agreement itself is similar to those in years past, no major changes. The only additional request we received from the food bank, you can see in Appendix 2, was the removal of some cabinets in the kitchen. Staff reviewed those and have no concerns doing that to provide them some extra storage space. With that, Chair, I stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions before I read the resolution? I'm seeing none. I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that council approve a lease agreement between the Township of Muskoka Lakes and the West Muskoka Food Bank for the exclusive use of the Glen Orchard Community Center as outlined in staff report PW-2024-30. And that staff be authorized to proceed with the minor interior building renovations as outlined in the staff report PW-2024-30 to be funded through the existing operating budget. Okay, are there any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That has passed. Thank you very much. Okay. The next item is item 8A, and I believe Director Peroshi is coming up to speak to this. Communications strategy.
Thank you, Chair Mazan and committee. I am here on behalf of myself and the communications advisor who is participating electronically from overseas today. So she is here with us. So I'm here before you today. Very excited to present the first public draft of the communication strategy. The strategy was developed fully in-house by conducting interviews with all members of council, members of the strategic leadership team and staff, stakeholders in the community, comparator municipalities, as well as conducting a community survey and extensive data analysis. You will see in the document before you the overall goals and objectives with the aim to address the key findings, which include strong internal communications, improvement of online presence, development of a consistent approach to engagement, formalizing brand identity, execute planned proactive communications, embracing partnerships, utilizing plain language, and encouraging in-person interactions. Out of these key findings, priority projects and initiatives have been identified, some of which include a community e-newsletter, so collecting some email addresses, focusing on education through social media and other media, an overhaul of the township's website, development of brand guidelines and a logo policy, enhancement of in-person engagement, and much more. While staff are excited to embark on all of these projects and initiatives as soon as possible, there is a timeline of projected start dates that have been identified, which aligns with the township's budget process. Our hope is that the document provides a foundation and framework to enhance both internal and external communication and leverages the most effective opportunities available to us. The recommendation before you today allows for 1 month of feedback from committee members, staff, and stakeholders. Please feel free to contact the communications advisor or myself directly with your questions and/or comments for consideration in the final draft. Thank you, and I now stand before you for questions.
Thank you, Director Peroshi. questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. So Crystal, I just was wondering why, I noticed, Facebook, Twitter, not Instagram. It wasn't, at least Instagram wasn't mentioned. Is there a reason for that?
We have looked at it. A lot of municipalities have been staying away from Instagram because it's so visual focused. So a lot of the information that we're getting across is so content heavy that it can be difficult. It is something that we're definitely looking at, but isn't quite a focus right at this time, but it'll be something that I'm sure will come down the line.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Boseworth?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. The vision on this is on communications. But to me, there is an overall arching objective, I think, that we want to enhance our community, our sense of community. And I was wondering if we had thought about potentially putting that kind of language into our vision. The vision is very much about communication, but we could include that to say, you know, to enhance the values and standards of our community. And we have, you know, lots of things that we'd like to promote in our community and get buy-in and people understand and believe in them, and therefore, you know, follow them and create this image of what Muskoka is. I think it's already defined, but I think, you know, as we're dealing with issues that are sometimes in contrary to what we all might have as a vision, communication channels are really good to help offset some of those things. So
Is the
the
question,
the question is, can, you know, you're right, that was a long preamble.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so, but a necessary preamble. And the question is there a way to, or is there a reason why you didn't think about that? Or what are your thoughts on that sort of comment with respect to the vision?
Thank you for the question. I do think it was absolutely considered, but if we're not, you know, hitting that in our mission and our vision statement, then that's kind of what we're here for today, is to hear the feedback, to say, you know what, maybe we missed the mark a little bit on that, and we need to include some extra wording. But it was certainly considered, and that's really the role of communication, right? Is to you know, promote and to engage with our community. So if there is some wording that's off, that's really what this month is all about. If you feel that we've missed the mark on something, we're happy to look at it.
Thank you. And maybe what I should do is I can read the resolution, and that allows for the conversation and the discussion. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that the draft strategy be received for information purposes, and that committee provide feedback to the communications advisor by May 30th, 2024, in order to facilitate its finalization at committee on June 12th, 2024. So that does give us all an opportunity to provide any feedback we might have. But at this point, I wouldn't mind hearing from others if there's any other. Okay, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the clerk, or how you call the director now, I get confused, my friend. Is a good report, and I really like that we have an opportunity to go through the content in detail. Because I did go back and looked at the last term's discussion that we had in assigning the communication specialist position. And a lot of the theme from that was, as you referred to in your document, plain talk. So when I go through the document, I will give you comments on maybe some of priorities. So that's for now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, through you. Following up, I think, with what Gord was saying, one of my pet peeves is plain English, but not in terms of how you've defined it in the report. It's more that sort of staying away from acronyms and all that kind of stuff. In general, I'll just say in the past, I worked with literacy people because of certain appeals I did. But when I read the reports from the township, they're, I would say, geared towards an education of level of university. So if you've got a university education, you can read these and understand them and everything's good. But if you don't, they're dense and they're small font and they're big words and they're long sentences and they're, long paragraphs. So I'm wondering if there's some way we can maybe do that, but also have an executive summary, which would be plain English and just hit the high points so that we can reach a broader market. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. And I'm even more basic through you. People still rely on our post offices to get notices when something is happening in the community. And I still think there's a lot of value with that. And I would certainly say that if we're going to be having, for instance, if we're having a meeting up at the Marriott to discuss a large community concern or something like that, that we actually use those very, very basic ways of communicating with people that this meeting is happening. Mm-hmm. So use our post offices, we know that we have them in Ballin, Port Carling and Windermere. I hope we still have one. Oh, no, that's a bigger concern, but I'm just saying, we did, but again, we're sort of losing communication with a large population of our, as much as we may not want to appreciate, we are a community of seniors. And their methods are the old methods. Where can I find this? Where can I read it? That sort of thing. And I just don't know that we're kind of hitting the mark with what we are doing right now. But
so I think I'm hearing in there consideration for the audience and the shifting landscape of communications, even having the newspapers removed is a significant thing that we're having to try to understand. So I hear that. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. So, great topic, and I think Councillor Nishikawa was bang on, whether it's post office, a bank, the few banks we have left, and, even stores, that service the people. We need to get the message out to the people because I don't think they're getting it. And again, they are becoming more senior. And it's almost reliant upon us to find all those ways to get those messages to those people. I don't believe we can communicate enough. But I think I said that in my interview with you guys, just give them that, tell them and then tell them again. And so I think, we often say, I know I said as a chair last cycle, we always say it's for the public record. And there's issues coming forward. We get a letter from an association with 1,200 signatures on it. Well, that's pretty significant, right? But I don't think the public knows, and I think the public needs to see, and I think that might be a function of the redesign of the website, so that website becomes so incredibly user friendly that the information just jumps off the page. And I think that's really an important piece of what you're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Director Peroshi?
Yeah, if I can just respond to the last two comments, because I completely understand and agree with both comments. I think the loss of having a newspaper was, very detrimental to our communications, because a lot of people relied on that. Not only that, we do have requirements under legislation to advertise certain things in newspaper. So we did have one recently, and in lieu of doing that, we did do a mail out. So utilizing the mail, because we understand that. We understand that people want kind of that written document in front of them, something to sit down with on Sunday morning to read. The other piece with that, and what we tried to focus on kind of in lieu of that, something that we could increase while not increasing the budget too greatly, was the in-person. So looking at doing in person, whether it's ourselves or whether it's something that somebody sees in person, so a poster or information, that's where a lot of that in-person focus came from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you. Through you. Interestingly enough, yesterday we had our library board meeting. And we were talking about strategic plan at the library board. And one of the things that we're thinking about is using the library much more effectively as a conduit to the community. So if we have documents that you need, put them in the library and let people pick them up. If you know, that they're ready and available and willing to do all of that thing. If you want to have a public message, put it through the libraries. That you've got an amazing resource there with a lot of people who show up. Why not use it?
Dr. Peroshi, did you? No,
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I was just thinking that, hearing my peers and what they had to say is that, and I recently saw, I got a newsletter. I think it was from the district. I can't remember. And it was a really simple little document that was a newsletter from the district. Did you? I think it was the district.
No, I see. Yeah.
And it's very straightforward. I know on Leonard Lake, we have something called e-blasts. And we have one person that writes an e-blast, an excellent little document summarized, in, with pictures and stuff like that. And we've lost our newspapers, yes. But maybe we should consider having the Township of Muskoka Lakes newsletter. Similar to what Leonard, if you take a look at the Leonard Lake one, and there's other lakes that have them, very simple, you can read it in no time. And it's just it's something like those little flyers that are in stores, that you pick up and it's got the advertisement on it and quick stories type of thing. But that could be a really good way because I have a large email list I've kept every email I got on short-term rental. So when I send something out, I just send my whole email list out. So maybe the township has got to start building an email list. I know it's going to be huge to keep track of, but when you do that, you put the names on, and if they get canceled, then you delete the name off, or you have at the bottom, if you don't want to receive this anymore, then we'll remove it. So that kind of thoughts on the communications. Thank you.
Director Peroshi?
Through you to Councillor Roberts. Absolutely. It was something that we heard from numerous people around this table, as well as members of the public, especially a lot of our stakeholders, was the email, getting information through email. So that is within this document, that is one of our goals and objectives. You'll see that something coming through in regards to that. There is some legislation around that. We have to be able to have the unsubscribe and all that. So we've got some logistics to figure out, but it is absolutely on our radar and something we'll be working on. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. Through you to Crystal, my question is there somewhere, I mean, I know it wasn't clear to me, is there some instruction somewhere? So when people want to send in letters and those, do we give them instructions on what we're looking for in a letter, like a name, address, and your connection to the community, that type of thing? I was a little concerned about getting a whole bunch of blank pages recently. They were blank to me because I saw some scribble on the bottom, and in fact I would even question if they were even from Muskoka, quite frankly. And so I'm wondering, is there a possibility that we give instruction and to really emphasize what we need as well as a council to appreciate those people that are writing in or that type of communication? I'm just not sure that we offer that.
To you, Chair Mazan. Thank you for that question. Should have been in the clerk's office yesterday because we were having this very discussion. We do have some very, very general guidelines within our procedural bylaw. We were focusing a little bit more on the presentations, which I think has kind of been working for some of the delegations coming forward, but this is our the next thing to tackle. And I think there might be some tweaks needed in our procedural bylaw to identify everything very clearly, and then to make sure that it's reflected on our website that we can direct people to as they want to submit things. So I absolutely hear what you're saying, and we agree.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any other comments? Councillor Edwards?
Yes, thank you through the chair. With all the cottages association, we give them a blast, they can send it out. And also the hall boards, most halls have a tack board, they can put something up on it, we send it through. They could go on, especially if it's for Ward A or for Ward B, they can, and that they can do that. So that would just be something else that we may be able to do. Thank you.
Through
Thank
the
you.
chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so right now, any of our media releases or advisories or anything like that does go through to the association. So we have an email list that goes out to them. They've given us permission to do that. We send it out to them, but the hall boards is a great suggestion, so we can reach out and add them to that list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One final comment, and then I was just going to remind everybody that we have another month to be able to provide, and I would encourage all of us, because this clearly is a topic we are all very passionate about.
Thank you, and through you, just so people do know that one of the ratepayers associations has a monthly news item, and its click open rate is over 80%. So we do know that information will get to people when it's provided in a format that they like. And a click rate through of 80% is massive.
Thank you. So I've read the resolution, but I will ask Councillor Bosenworth.
Actually, there's more than one association that has monthly newsletters.
I was just talking about the click rate of that one particular.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This has been an ongoing conversation for those of us that there's a huge passion and an interest. And I think, and I am grateful that staff has opened up an opportunity for us to provide. And I hope that staff is willing to listen to all of these items, how it looks and feels when it comes back. We'll have our footprint and our fingerprints on it, I should say, as well, because we're passionate. So thank you very much. I've read the resolution. Councillor Savitz,
Thank you. Thank you. And I really do appreciate this opportunity because, this is such a vital piece of what we do outward facing to our taxpaying public. And I got to ask probably an ignorant question, but I know I sat in on an interview with you guys months ago. And I'm wondering, is this thing logically, how do I say this, moving at a snail's pace because of budget? Or is this a function, and I'm not being critical, just here it is in front of us and we deal with some other things in an expeditious manner. This is vital. And I'm wondering, is there a particular reason why this is taking as long as it's taking? And is that a budgetary thing is my question?
Yeah,
I guess.
that's a good question. Councillor or Director Peroshi.
Thank you. Through you. It is a great question. So there's a few elements to it. One is we did, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we did a lot of interviews. It wasn't just with council. We did numerous with staff, with our stakeholders, with other municipalities. So our communications advisor actually went to other municipalities and sought out some information. We did a survey as well. And then we took all that data. And as you can imagine, all of that data took some time to go through. So that's one piece. The other piece is a communications advisor still has a full workload. So this was something that we did fully in-house. We did run into a couple things that set us back a couple of months for sure. We were hoping to get back to you a little bit earlier, but those are really the two biggest reasons. It was just the volume of data that we got, which was great, but there was a lot to go through. And then, yeah, just some other items that came up that took precedent over this.
So I think the answer I'm hearing is that it is a resource issue. To respond to Councillor Zavitz's question. Okay. I will then call the question. All those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. That carries. Okay, we are now moving on to 8B. Welcome. Director Donaldson.
Good morning, committee. So the first item I have is a report, some minor housekeeping with respect to our policy on travel expenses. So unfortunately, the change in format, we changed our format of our policies a couple of years ago. So this is a very old policy that we're now changing the format to in a new. So I don't have a red line version, but I have noted the significant changes in the report. Most notable, I guess, is the removal of cash advances. We've not issued a cash advance, and in 2024, we live in more and more of a cashless world. So we've removed that language from this policy. I've also, for control reasons, introduced a new provision that basically speaks to when there's a group meal, the most senior person in that group would pay. And the reason for that is so that if a more junior person paid, the person that participates in that meal might actually be approving their own expense, which would not be appropriate. So the most senior person there would pay, and then that would be approved by someone else that would not have been at that event. I've also included some hospitality language clarifications, and so subject to pre-approval of the CAO. Hospitality is for hosting dignitaries and conducting official business with individuals that are not township employees. We've also included a change to the Good Governance Policy 11 for council remuneration and expenses. There were some conflicts between the two policies which needed to be resolved. The old travel policy said councillor expenses were approved by the CAO. The Good Governance Policy said that councillor expenses were approved by the clerk. So we've now corrected that conflict. And we've also removed the requirement for that form to be completed for the technology allowance that councillors receive annually. It'll just be an automatic allowance that's paid annually to councillors during their term. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, committee, are there any questions for Director Donaldson? Councillor Bosmer.
Thank you, and through you. One of the guidelines that I think is interesting is the conference training sessions for members of council with a limit of, I think it's 3 for regional and provincial and 2 for national ones. And I was wondering what would, how would that, if we wanted to rethink that and perhaps increase those numbers a little bit, what would be the appropriate process for doing that? Is that an actual policy change rather than just freshening up these documents?
Okay, thank you. Director Donaldson.
So through the chair, so this is a council policy, so we certainly could take instruction from council if they wish to change the parameters within that policy. There would be a budgetary impact. The current budget reflects this policy, so depending on the effective date and when that would happen, we could either do that through the budget process and dovetail it with a change in this policy, or move it through as directed by committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you through you to Mr. Bosworth. What would you like to see changed? Like, would you like to see more allowance? I'm suggesting. I have found it interesting over the years to at one point councillors went to New York. So I'm just curious as to what you would like to see happen if there was a change.
I think one of provincial and one national for each year of term. So that'd be, you could potentially go to 2 conferences each year. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds to me like there's an idea on the table to update the policy. CAO Hammond. Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
So I did want to follow up on that because I find it interesting and more about the question of like what ones. So for instance, our when we say national, we're talking about the Federation of Municipalities. I'll say that's what it's been. And they do, as was explained to me some time ago, that they do hold them in Ontario every once in a while. I just personally have a concern that we would be putting people on a plane to go to British Columbia for a 3-day conference. And interestingly, I just don't know the value. So that's where my bigger, for that particular conference.
Okay, so CAO Hammond.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. So this is an interesting topic. I think if you think back to some of the sessions that we've held since you were elected, in terms of the inauguration, the onboarding, some of our continued efforts. So we're taking a much more proactive approach to provide collective training as a group on various topics. I appreciate what Councillor Bosenworth is mentioning. There's some value in going to sessions like AMO. There may be some FCM sessions. If this is something that you'd like us to look at, because there is budget impacts, I think we need to be thoughtful about how we do this, right? Because there's the collective notion as well as expenses that goes with that we should probably include in this area, if you will. And then there's that individualized experience or training that you get from going to these various sessions or conferences. So I think we need to be thoughtful about the topics for individual sessions or conferences, et cetera. And how, do they dovetail on what we're looking at collectively, right? Are we not covering things off twice, et cetera? So if it's something you're interested in having us go back and look at, we're happy to do that. I would suggest that we proceed with the suggested changes this morning, and then, you know, we can come back with I think there probably needs to be a little bit of interaction between members of committee, council and staff with respect to, you know, are we covering off what we should be in the collective training, along with what are your interests as it relates to some of the individualized or conference things. And then we can sort of take a look at what that looks like along with the expenses, and then come back and have probably a little bit more of an informed conversation.
Okay, thank you. I see our clerk is capturing, I think perhaps an approach or next steps on that particular item. Before I read a resolution, are there any other questions for Director Donaldson? Okay, I'm seeing none. I do have an updated version, I think. Of course. Committee, what I'm going to suggest actually, if I could, is let's take our 15-minute break now. It gives staff a chance to, I haven't read a resolution yet, so I think we can do that, right? And then we'll come back and I'll read the updated resolution. It just gives staff a few minutes to capture, and it gives all of us a chance to have our break. So we'll be back here at 5 after 10. Is that right? 5 after 10? Yes. Okay, committee, thank you. We are live. And talking. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that break. I now have a resolution and an amendment to the resolution to read, and then we can have further discussion. So the first resolution as an agenda moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Mayor Kelly. Be it resolved that the proposed amendments to policies CFS-06 expenses for township business and CGG-11 council remuneration, thank you, and expense policy as outlined in staff report FIN 2024-006 be recommended for approval by council. So I'm going to set that one aside because I do have an amendment as discussed prior to our break. So I will read that now. Moved by Councillor Bosenworth, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to include the following. And that staff be directed to investigate the implications of increasing the number of conferences and training sessions that councillors are permitted to attend pursuant to policy CGC-11 council remuneration and expense policy and report back to committee. At this point, I'm going to open up the floor for further conversation or discussion on the amendment. Does that capture an appropriate next step, Councillor Bosenworth? You're feeling comfortable with that? Okay. So
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to ask the question then. All in favor of the amendment? Thank you. And then all in favor of the main motion as amended? Thank you. That carries. Thank you, Director Donaldson. We will now move on to item 8C.
Right. Thank you, Chair. So the next item, again, is a policy update with respect to investments for the municipality. Again, there's notable changes in the report. There is not a red line version because of the format change again. I would highlight for committee that part of this amended policy asks that staff or derives that staff will be looking at ESG, environmental, social, and governance type investments, socially responsible, to ensure that we are supporting those types of investments that are consistent with our values and our vision. As well, part of the policy would also require that a cash flow be included through the budget process, and this would help to drive the investment decisions by being able to determine what our near-term and our longer-term cash requirements are, so that we are making appropriate quantity and quality investments through that process. The appendix attached to the policy expands the rating for the suggested investment types that we could invest in beyond the DBRS rating to include other rating agencies. At this time, staff are suggesting that the policy in its current form would maintain the investments of the legal list as specified in regulation under the Municipal Act that would basically, reflect bonds, secured investments, and that we not proceed with a prudent investor strategy at this time until we are through our more planning and strategic discussions around service levels, and we understand what our true near-term and long-term cash requirements are. With this policy, what we would do as staff, we would take as pending approval, we would go to market for request for information just to get an understanding of the landscape in terms of who's available to us and what services they offer that would meet our needs in accordance with this policy. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you to Mark. So I look at next steps and certainly staff, you are proposing to seek external advisors. So clearly we're going to be talking about costs to invest on our behalf based on different financial instruments. Do you need any guidance with that? Does the township over the years I don't recall in my terms of reference, talking about it in terms of service for fee. Can you speak to that?
Okay, thank you, Director Donald.
Just sorry, question.
Mhm.
You know, what do we, or have we paid fees to advisors in the past? And,
you.
what does that look like?
Okay, thank you, Director Donaldson.
Thank you.
So through the chair, I can't speak to what we have paid in the past. I'm not aware. For the time that I've been here, all of our money has been held in our main bank account. So that's been our investment. What I'm looking to do is, right now, we're experiencing quite a unique situation, or I guess it's not so unique now because it's been so long in terms of how long it's been happening, but we have high interest rates. But at some point, we're expecting the Bank of Canada is going to start lowering interest, and we need to look at other opportunities to try to optimize and maximize our return. So I don't know what we've paid in the past, but I think that would be part of the request for information purpose or process, is to look at what vendors are out there, what actors there are in this space, and find out what they do for municipalities in this investment portfolio.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, through you to Mark. I guess my question is, I'm going to do a preamble, sorry. My memories have been that we would have joined with the District of Muskoka, and the other municipalities would have come up with some kind of an investment strategy at some point. Is that conversation still happening?
Okay, thank you. Director Donaldson.
So through the chair. So my understanding is that the District of Muskoka and I believe the town of Bracebridge and the town of Huntsville are all doing the prudent investor route. So that's a special section of the Municipal Act where they're dealing with one investment, specifically with respect to long-term cash requirements. So at this time, our staff are not suggesting that we go the prudent investor route. But if at some point in the future, we determined that our cash reserves were such that we could participate in that in a meaningful way, we would certainly come back to council and look for direction to join the District of Muskoka and Huntsville and Bracebridge to pursue that. At this time, we would be looking to just do the typical secured protection of principal type investments.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that committee approve the updated policy CFS 04-investments as attached as Appendix 1 to report FIN-2024-007. Any further comment? Councillor Bosenworth? No? Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. Okay. Thank you. Director Donaldson, item 8D.
Thank you, Chair. And so this report is an information report again. It's our quarterly update on finances. So this is to March 31st. Actuals are being reported against the full year's budget. So we're managing to an annual spending limit on each of the lines. Many expenses, as you know, are seasonal, such as snow removal occurring earlier in the year. Recreational activities occur later in the year. We've done some of our tax billings in Q1 for the interim payment. We'll do the second in Q2. So they've been included in this report, and they're driving many of the variances that we're seeing. Some expenses are budgeted but not yet incurred. So such as our semi-annual debt repayment is scheduled for June and December. So that's not reflected in this report, as well as some of our legal and consulting budget amounts have not yet been utilized. We have had some staff vacancies in Q1, but we are expecting increases in staffing costs as the year progresses, particularly over the summer months as we have seasonal staff joining us. On the capital side, early in the year, we've seen nearly $1 million of costs captured that were related to projects that were approved last year. And the most significant one of that would be the Medora Street wall down the road here, which is accounting for almost $700,000 in Q1. Noted costs that were approved in 2024 that have been recorded include a fire tanker for Foots Bay, which actually I believe was delivered this week, and some other rolling stock. And as we finalize our 2023 audit, which is still ongoing, we will update final year-end reserve balances and provide forecasts later in the year. And as we enter the budget presentation use that as a baseline to kind of go forward with our projections. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Comments? I believe this is for information. Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to thank you for your very comprehensive report and update. And with that, I will move on.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Director Donaldson. Ms. Lehman. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Mazza and members of the committee. You have before you a report about the first step in the compensation review, selecting the comparators. As described in the report, the comparators form the benchmark to establish fair market value of the salaries. The compensation review is an important tool to ensure pay transparency and fairness and assist with the retention and attraction of staff. The review, this review proposes to include 3 new comparators and remove 1 previously used. Next steps will be to gather the information and analyze it before bringing it back to committee. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm curious about in the appendix, what taxation own purposes, what that line actually means.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. This information comes from the financial information report. So that's a header from that report. So I'm not sure the specific. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you again through you. Specifically, I guess, these are not current numbers that are, if I look at just the Township Muskoka Lakes, and again, I'm just not sure what that, is that our overall, hello back there, sorry. Is this the overall budget for the township, I guess, is what I should be asking.
So thank you. I think the question is in Appendix 1 under the taxation own purposes. What is that? What is that value? Director Donaldson, you might be able to help out.
Through you, Chair. I'm not sure that I can answer the question right at this moment, so I'd have to go back and get more information.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions? I do have a question, and I just wanted to understand as we look at the comparators, and I see every year we're doing a similar group with the ebbing and flowing. And given that HR is one of our biggest focuses right now, has contemplation been given to expanding that group to beyond the traditional borders? Because I would imagine then from a recruiting standpoint, we would be looking across Ontario. So I'm just curious.
Thank you, Chair. So we're using principles from the policy that we developed after the last review. And it does kind of talk about the tier level, the local area, that sort of thing. So it's something we could look into during this review. And I'd be happy to have the consultant comment on that a little bit further so she could talk about the broad area and the impacts of adding a bigger municipality or someone from outside of our area. There's more significant financial impacts if you include municipalities closer to big city centers, that sort of thing. So
thank you. I see SDAO Hammond.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure I completely understood the question, but I do note that there are municipalities in this list outside of Muskoka. They reach into Simcoe County as well as towards Collingwood. So we're kind of looking at a central Ontario area. I don't know if that's helpful.
Thank you. And I think just to perhaps add clarity to my question, I was actually thinking more of other like facility or municipalities outside of the bigger centers, i.e. places like Goderich, Prince Edward County, things like that, just to see if we are in a similar bracket, but I will leave it at that. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that the recommended comparators as outlined in Appendix 1 be to report HR 2024-003 be approved for the compensation review. Are there any comments? Discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That carries. Okay, I'm now inviting to the 9A. Sorry, Mr. Cox, you made a move. I think it's actually the fire chief. You got me confused. I think it's the fire chief at this point. And he is on the screen. Welcome, Chief Morale.
Good morning, Chair Mazan. Good morning, committee. I apologize that I could not attend this morning. I'm currently in Moncton for a family engagement. I am, however, excited and pleased to present the next phase of our fire station location study. This is the phase 2 report before you today. Also in the council chamber, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that due to technical difficulties at times, I wanted to make sure that we had some insight. So in the chamber right now, you'll see Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Gano, and online we also have Rick Monkman, a consultant from the Emergency Management Group. You might recall that Rick also was involved in our Fire Master Plan project. He was a key contributor to that document, and that's why he is best suited to help me address any questions from this body today. Thank you, Chair. I'll move ahead with my summary here. For committee's benefit, I offer a brief history about the fire station location study. In June 2020, Council received the Fire Master Plan, and one of the recommendations was to analyze options for fire station locations. At that time, 3 options were presented. The fire station location study was further commissioned by this body last year with the intent of identifying a deployment model that is designed to meet the needs of our community. This committee has received the first phase report in December 2023, and that concerned information that we had gathered about the stations, and it also had a brief evaluation of the current deployment model. Further to that analysis, in this phase 2 document, this compares that deployment model to the existing public safety best practices towards a development of alternatives and identifying the preferred model. What I will draw for committee's attention is the highlights in this report. In this report, you will see a deployment analysis that identifies the 7 response zones and considers 2 best practices to analyze against. Also in this report, you will see more in-depth evaluations of each facility and the limitations of each building concerning safety, storage, and space. And also in this report, you'll see design requirements that should be considered in any fire station designed moving forward. If committee approves staff, staff will then socialize this document and collect feedback from stakeholders. That includes staff, stakeholders in the community, and public. Budgetary estimates will be provided, and timelines will also be provided in a final document brought back to council. However, caution should be used about any budgetary estimation, as fire station construction has not been immune to inflation. It is staff's intention that upon completion of the fire station location study in its final, this study will be used to inform the service level review study for the township and inform any future asset management through our budgets. I now stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee, before I read a resolution, I would like to open up the floor for questions. Chief Morale, our consultant, Councillor Nishikawa.
I know I have more questions, but this one is just because this through you to Chief Morale, we just heard that you got delivery, or the fire department got delivery of a new truck in Foots Bay. And at what point are we going to stop purchasing until we figure out what we need and have? I guess is my bigger question.
Okay, Chief Morale.
Currently today, our plan is to operate the service under the plan that currently exists under the established and regulating bylaw. And that bylaw says right now that we will have 10 stations and 7 response zones. That plan comes to council every year in various formats, but one of the formats is the 10-year capital plan. And in that 10-year capital plan, we are committing to and continuing with the truck asset purchasing. Should committee approve this document moving forward, this document will inform a service level review, which could have the potential of reducing that asset load.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the fire master plan? Okay, I will read the resolution and that gives us an opportunity to discuss. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that that's wrong. Apologies. I had the wrong resolution. And Mr. Cox is in front of me again. Okay, moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the draft Phase 2 Fire Station Location Study, May 8th, 2024 be received, and that further stakeholder feedback be received in order to inform, update the final draft of the study to be received by Committee Council. Thank you. Are there any further comments? Councillor Nishikawa?
Certainly through you to anyone that will hear, the concern that I've heard for many, many years, honestly, because this has been a discussion again for many, many years of, you know, do we need 10 fire stations, for instance? And one thing that was raised, and I would say prior to Port Carling being built, was that the fact that fire stations don't put out fires. And so it's not the buildings don't put out fires. And I think that that's one thing I really want to emphasize, because it's more, and again, if you go to Ward A, in particular Walker's Point and Torrance area, 9 Mile, Southwood, all of that whole area, the concerns of getting people there is a big concern. And I still don't necessarily, and I'm not looking for an answer today, but it is a concern in the community. And those of us that get stuck waiting for now, more than mile-long trains, more than 10, many times it's more like 15 minutes that you got to wait for a train. And those types of things, that's a big reality in the community of Ward A. And that's an outstanding issue that's going to come up from the public for sure. And again, I hear it on a regular basis. So I would just be welcoming that public input. But I think that a lot of it is going to be focused on that and how do we get to people with an additional 10, 15-minute wait, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. And any other comments, questions? Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, I wonder if the chief could speak to Councillor Nishikawa's comments about longer trains and some of those other issues that are, you know, certainly coming to the fore.
Okay, Chief Morrell.
Yeah, so certainly we have contemplated those kinds of restrictions to our response when we're having conversations with the consultants. And we have envisioned this, and it's been placed inside 2 different documents, the community risk assessment and also the fire master plan cites those restrictions. So that being said, if you look at this report that's before you, there are 3 options that are presented. And one of those options does include retaining a station on both sides of those constraints. So it is for that very reason that we have that constraint in that document. But what I would like to encourage everyone here on committee to do, please reach out to the stakeholders and the public in your areas and ensure that they are providing us their feedback through those stakeholder sessions. That is where the bulk of this insight will be placed into a final document for committee's attention, committee's review. So again, please encourage people, once we circulate those dates, to provide that commentary, because that will allow us to have a a very well-informed document to provide to the service level review consultants.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I'd like to begin by saying what an excellent report. From the point of view of giving us what's possible and the backup and the information. This is a key report for our service level reviews. And what Councillor Nishikawa is saying, the other on ground type of concerns that we have, and I'm sure the process will work through this. So I look forward to getting into those discussions, and I will reach out to the community on this report. Matter of fact, I talked about the report on the other night with the Raymond Community Center. But going back to a couple of points we had, agenda items we had, maybe Chief Ryan, I will reach out to you because I need a Reader's Digest version. Like I'll sit down and read through it, but I need something that the community, like it's a very wholesome document, but sort of the highlights. So I'll talk to you, see if we can come up with something that I can communicate to the community that is short and brief. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any other, I see Councillor Edwards.
Yes, excellent report as usual. And that, I was just wondering, when I look at the cost of fire stations, and I did see in there the extreme fire station where it's just modules being built, is that what we would be looking at in the future?
Okay.
That's one question to the chair.
Okay. Chief Morrell?
Yeah, through you, Chair Mazan, I keep forgetting to say that, so my apologies. Through you, Chair, to committee. Yes, that those pictures that are in the back are design alternatives that are presented for committee to have an idea or a semblance of what could be. That is not something that we're pushing towards, but that is something that could show what could be. And one of the things that I would note, when you look at those designs, they are designed in such a fashion to meet the current requirements that exist right now. And that is one of the other reasons that we are looking at upgrading the stations that we own today, is to meet those design requirements. So thank you for highlighting that.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay,
supplemental?
and supplemental. I see the port carding station is 14 years old. And I believe the treasurer can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're still paying for that. And that, so, you know, we've known that we need one in Manette, and now we know these other ones. Would we not be wise to put some money aside for this? Had we started this 10 years ago, we would have had enough maybe for a station now. And that, so it's just a case of if we're looking at the future, getting these reports. We know we need $5 and $6 million stations in that. If we have to borrow for them, it's really going to put us in a real precarious situation. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Hammond?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Edwards raises a good point, and I think council is cognizant of the fact that we're kind of at the start of the process, and that, you know, as you go through the service level review, some of the change that we're talking about, and I think this is a key message for the community, is that this is change that's not going to happen overnight. We're talking anywhere between 5 to potentially 40 to 50 years. But council's was very prudent in terms of knowing this is coming. You started raising contributions to reserves quite significantly last year. I suspect we'll need to continue down that path. We will be moving forward at bringing policies forward. The Director of Legislative Services is going to be bringing forward policies with respect to updated land divestment policies, disposition policies, realtor of record policies, with a view to allowing us to go through, evaluate some of the lands that we own. We own a significant amount of lands, so there'll be a filter of looking at them as to whether or not it's a trail or a park or affordable housing. And if it's not, then that's something that can be brought forward to council for sale. And that's another revenue source in addition to the levy that we can look at to fund some of these future needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have read the resolution. So we shifted back into questions. I will read it again, I did read it, but I think I will read it again, just for everybody's clarity here. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that that draft phase 2 fire station location study, May 8th, 2024 be received, and that further stakeholder feedback be received in order to inform, update the final draft of the study to be received by committee and council. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. Thank you for calling in today, Chief Morrell. I hope you have a good time out east. And I do want to thank for everyone involved on these important initiatives. It is going to help inform our discussion at the level of service study. So all the work that you are putting into it and the engagement with the community, I think is going to be really helpful and important over the coming years. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you.
James can move. Mr. Cox. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So my first report for you this morning is on the Muskoka Regional Workforce Development Strategy. This strategy has been developed over the past year and a half as a collaborative project between all of the municipalities in Muskoka in an effort to create a strategy and a way forward to address some of the workforce and labor shortages that have been impacting the business community in the Muskoka region and the province more broadly. There are a number of long-term initiatives included in the report. It's intended to be implemented over the coming years, over the long term. The implementation plan, which has been developed by the economic development officers as a short-term way forward, is included in Appendix 2 of the report for your reference. There will also be a presentation from the consultant who worked with us to develop this report at the District of Muskoka's Finance and Corporate Services Committee next week on May 22nd for anyone who would be interested in more details or a more fulsome presentation on the strategy. And at that point, I would be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, committee questions for Mr. Cox. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, I have a couple of questions. Do we have the ability to measure the value that this relationship creates specifically to the township of Muskoka Lakes? I realize this isn't a huge budget item. I think it's $2,500 a year, if I'm not mistaken. But I can't help but wonder if really what we're doing is subsidizing the cost of a recruitment program that's most likely going to show impact in at least one or two of the towns. So that'd be the first question. You know, is there a way to measure whether or not, how much of this lands here, lands home? We'll just leave it at that and I'll come back with our
Okay. Well, through you, Madam Chair. So all of the, in terms of measurement, the municipality does our annual business survey every year. And when that program was originally developed, all of our other municipalities in Muskoka developed similar surveys as well. So everyone tracks more or less the same data. And in part that was done to give us a database that we could compare results between municipalities in an effective way. So I will say that we are able to track some of the progress that we've seen on workforce issues through that survey. But I will also say that the results of the survey that we've seen over the past few years indicate a large degree of labor mobility in Muskoka. Simply because residents may not be located here does not necessarily mean they don't work here, or vice versa. We have residents that work in other areas of the district as well. So I would say the answer to your question is yes, we do have some ability to track that, and that's something we're going to be looking at as we do our business survey going forward. But we also need to recognize that our business community isn't a self-contained ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. A supplemental?
Thank you. And through you, yes, one supplemental. Do we have the ability to identify if I understand all of the municipalities and the district were aligned on this when the thing was created, but the sands tend to shift and things like doctor recruitment, hospital location are going to create a bit of a gravity in certain places that doesn't exist in others. At some point in time, do we say, you know what, we're just not seeing value from this as those kinds of developments occur? And again, not a huge amount of money, but there's some value in independence, I think, rather than subsidizing their cost of recruitment.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Well, certainly, our intention is to assess how the implementation of the strategy is going on an annual basis. And as outlined in the report, our intention certainly is to advance any funding or any initiatives that we are going to be contributing to. That will come forward through the regular budget process. And so there'll be an opportunity for committee and council to check in on the status of the strategy and assess how happy they are with the progress we've seen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. And often, whether I'm sitting at district or here, I come across information that quite honestly isn't out there. And as a business owner, I'm curious of how do we reach out to our local businesses to let them know that there's an availability of this particular service? And I would also suggest that the majority of the work that I see is construction. But I don't see that, I've never thought that this fitted our reality of Muskoka Lakes. And so I'm just not sure how, in fact, we do engage those to participate. I'm not sure.
Through you, Madam Chair. In terms of reaching out to the business community, we have a number of channels that we use to do that. We do that directly. So for example, when this project was being developed, the municipality provided the consultant with a list of our major employers in the community, and they were directly engaged by the consultant to gather feedback for a strategy. More broadly, if you look in the strategy, a lot of the items that are to be implemented are going to be done in conjunction with the support organizations that help the business community already in Muskoka. So the Muskoka Small Business Center, the Chambers of Commerce in every one of the municipalities. We rely on those groups pretty heavily because they have an existing network of businesses that they deal with to help get the word out there about the resources and supports that are available.
Thank you. Director Councillor Burry.
Thank you. Through you, I'll make I will be at the district corporate services, financial corporate services meeting next week, and I'll commit to bringing back to this committee a full report of what's said there.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Cox? Councillor Edgar, sorry.
Thank you. Through the chair. I'm just looking here. It says they had a resident survey. There's only 76 people that answered it. So in other words, we're basing a whole report on 76 replies and that. And then do they know where they came from? Like, were they all in one municipality? Or if you break it down out of 6 to 13 people in each municipality, and that I think, and I've seen this on our second home study, and that we get skewed figures. How do we adjust for that?
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the survey, the challenges with the survey were definitely noted as a challenge when we were developing this project. There is a pronounced sense of survey fatigue out there, especially around the business community. Frankly, people are tired of filling out surveys, especially as we've recovered from the pandemic. And there's been a number of programs that have been put out to try and assist the business community. There's a definite sense from the community that, or from the business community, that they filled out enough surveys. So it's a challenge to get people to respond. In terms of the exact breakdown of where those responses come from, I know our consultant does have that information. I don't have it available to me right now, but there was at least some responses from every one of the participating municipalities. But I also think it's important to note that the surveys were not the only way that we gathered feedback. There were also employer focus groups that were put together based on both geographic area and industry sector. And as I noted, that we provided information to the consultant about who our major employers were in Muskoka Lakes that they could reach out to directly to engage them directly.
Thank you.
Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you to James. I'm not seeing and I'm not hearing this season of these vast shortages of staffing that we've heard in these other years, the COVID years for sure. Can you speak to that from your role as the township representative on that whole piece? I'm not seeing the signs advertising, help wanted to the same extent. Are you noticing a reduction or a difference in any of that, or through your associations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think that that is a fair comment, that the labor shortage in Muskoka is not as acute as it was perhaps 2 years ago. And that's because of a combination of factors, I think. You're seeing the labor market has softened a little bit due to prevailing economic conditions. And I also think that there is a widespread sense of uncertainty among large parts of the business community about what the future of the economy is going to look like over the next few years. That's something that we saw through our business survey, and we've seen through other reports as well. So while in general the labor shortage may be less pressing than it was, again, right when we were coming out of the pandemic, there is still a recognized need that we need to find ways to recruit skilled workers if we want to diversify the economy and build a year-round economy, as we note in our ACTEV strategy.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the Muskoka Workforce Strategy and the Muskoka Workforce Strategy Implementation Plan attached as appendices 1 and 2 to staff report CED 2024-010 be received, and that staff be directed to proceed with the goals as outlined in the Muskoka Workforce Strategy Implementation Plan. Are there any further comments? Discussions? Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. I'll just quickly, through you, I am actually hearing from people as we're trying to hire others to do more, other companies and that sort of thing, that they are lacking staff right now. And again, the housing issue is the biggest attention of why you can't keep the staff or retain them, and where we're going from there. So there is still staffing issues, definitely labor related specifically, and it's still a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just have one comment, and it is, and you may or may not be able to respond, but as I was reading through this, it's a fairly comprehensive overview of workforce challenges. It's kind of captures our demographics nicely. Do we have a sense as to how the township of Muskoka Lakes relates on the is this reflective of this in township? Are there unique characteristics to us here in the township that we need to be thinking about?
Well, thank you. I think that's an interesting question. I would say that our economy here within the bounds of the municipality skews heavily towards construction, trades, but also tourism. And tourism particularly has had pronounced challenges in the workforce, in finding and particularly retaining workforce. Oftentimes the employment is seasonal. It's not always it doesn't necessarily pay as well as some other sectors. And so as a result, tourism, although it's a huge part of our economy in Muskoka, has really struggled, I think, to come back from some of the shocks of the pandemic. So I think that is the lens that I would encourage us to take a look through at this strategy through. I mean, the challenges that are identified there are common to every municipality in the region, and it's just a question of which sectors predominate in each particular community that determines how that the impacts of that workforce shortage are felt on the ground.
Thank you. And I think if I could just add one further comment for future conversation discussion is, given the scale of our seasonal population, I think historically, there's been a huge workforce that has come up with that seasonal population. One of the things I've heard time and time again is I wish that there was more of these students that were available. And I do think it's an audience that we need to understand. It has shifted, there's no question, but they have housing, they have access and transportation, and they have an ability, but I think somehow that products mix just needs to be understood. So I think it's an audience that's perhaps worthy of exploring.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I actually have read the resolution. I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. That carries. Item 10B.
Well, thank you again, Madam Chair. So my second report to committee this morning provides the recommended approvals for the spring intake of the 2024 Community Grant Program. As I've outlined in my report and the appendix with the approval recommendations, there was considerable interest in the program this year, with the requests that we received far exceeding the total available budget. The full approval recommendations and justifications for them are contained in Appendix 1 of the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee may have at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for providing us a good detail on each of the applicants. So committee, with that, are there any questions? Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you to James, there was a couple of there's a few things I have a concern about this. Others, I'm sure, sit and write reports constantly to get the grants and things like that. I am concerned that there's not room left for new initiatives. Very, very much so. So for instance, we've had a few people come forward in Ward A that said, this would be a great idea if we could bring it forward, and you know, is there financing available? But again, I think these same folks that are sort of constantly here for the asking, get in quick, get in first, and we try to, so I have a concern about that, but also it felt like, at least one of the applications, that felt like we did them through a different budget process. Like, so and I'm sorry I didn't follow through with it, but we already said, okay, we're going to give these groups the grant. They don't have to come and apply every year. So the Chamber of Commerce, those kind of things. It just felt like one of the particular ones, it seems like they just keep coming up. And I also have a concern about sort of the community garden aspect. Because I didn't understand that when we established the community gardens, that we would then be putting a yearly budget amount to that. I had thought we were more or less laying out the location, the site, and all those sort of things, and that the public would just go and, much like, it's not much like Milford Bay, but it could be like Milford Bay's gardens, that they would go in claim a spot, and that would be they weren't here to apply for money to claim that spot. So I'm not clear. I'm not asking you very clearly either, but I'm not clear how some of these organizations come into play with a grant, quite honestly. And again, when I look at, we created these gardens in Bala, for instance, and I had thought that the public was then taking it on. So I don't understand now that we're going to another volunteer group and who gets to choose, gets to be in the garden. Like I'm more concerned about what all of the optics around all of that.
So I feel like there was quite a few questions in there. So I'm gonna do my best. Or would you like, you take a lead and
Well, certainly,
go from there.
through you, Madam Chair. On a few points that were raised, I will note that our grants policy does establish that receiving a community grant in 1 year is no guarantee of receiving future support. That is why we note in the recommendations whether a group has received support before in the past, so that committee has that context. I will note that every application that comes forward is assessed on its own merits based on the work that is proposed. So under the municipal grants policy, an organization cannot apply for a community grant to cover regular operating expenses. They need to be for a specific initiative or a specific piece of work that they are doing in the year that has a benefit to the community. And so again, when we assess the applications, those are the criteria that are being used. So to use the example of the community garden application, they did receive a grant to establish the plots last year. From their application, they have noted that this year they are planning on relocating the garden to a drier area of Jasmine Park, the area that they were established in, as Jasmine Park is wont to do. It can be quite wet, and also expanding it and adding additional infrastructure there. So it's different work than was applied for last year, and that is as a result, it met the grants policy, and that's why the recommendation was made.
A supplemental, yes.
So this is where I get a little bit confused, is I thought this was a staff driven, like, so when Director Becking was here, the way I understood it, that his team would go out and help those gardeners establish that location. They did choose, like, I remember the report, they chose that particular location, and I thought our staff built it, I guess. My concern, again, is, does this mean now staff's not involved? And like, other than giving, the granting kind of thing, but because that would really concern me in a public park, that we would just be saying, okay, now go find a new location. And I just don't understand the connection with Public Works. And
perhaps I could ask Mr. Moore to come up and make a quick comment.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to help. So we do have a policy in regards to our community gardens. And with that, they are spearheaded and led by a local community group. The involvement with the township is obviously, we received that proposal in particular, being a new community garden, and we allow them to use that space. We do provide them some assistance on getting it set up because it's quite a bit at the beginning. But the ongoing operations, as per the agreement we have with that group, is they lead kind of the day-to-day operations and the structure surrounding the community garden itself and everything.
Okay, thank you. So hold on for just a moment. One more supplemental, and then I'll let.
I guess again, I'm not clear of this volunteer group, but do they get to choose who gets to be in the garden?
Mr. Moore?
In simple terms, yes. Yes, it's their responsibility to manage the operations of the community garden, allocate space, etc.
Okay, thank you. So today what we are focused on is the appendix, correct? It's the different applications, and if we have specific questions. So that was a good discussion on the BALA, or clarification on the community garden piece. So at this point, I will ask Mayor Kelly and then Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, real quick question. Are we obligated to disclose the declines. And the only reason I ask is it looks a little harsh somehow. The ones who apply and take nothing or are granted nothing, just surprised to see that it's in here. Maybe we're obligated to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cox?
Through you, Madam Chair. So under the grants policy, and the previous practice has been to disclose all applications, and if funding is not recommended for approval, to disclose the reasons to do that.
Thank
And
you.
and all applicants are notified in writing of the response.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Roberts. Okay, Councillor Roberts?
Very quickly, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I know when we were completing the applications a few years ago, there was a follow-up step after it's done for a report from the people that received it. I assume or trust you are still getting those reports and rereading them, and that's just a question.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, all recipients of a community grant are required to complete a year-end report that details how the grant was spent. And I believe we have received all of the ones from the 2023 recipients.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, thank you for the indulgence. I guess if I have one concern, and quickly reading the report over, it seems like we've again, over the years, are we moving away from acknowledging the various events or items for what they really are, or perhaps should be worth or should be getting, and instead we're just simply going down the list and everybody gets $2,000. You know, I mean, to me, that's a little different strategy than actually identifying each need. We're simply saying, hey, Meals on Wheels, you get $2,000. You know, so essentially we're just finding a vehicle to get rid of $25,000 respectfully to the public, right? So, you know, if that's the case, you know, to the mayor's point, there are some that just simply aren't going to cut it. They're not going to make the list this time. I just wonder about that theory. That it sure looks like that to me, that if I were one of the groups looking for as much cash as I could get for free from the township, now all of a sudden we've gone to 2K, you know, everybody gets $2,000, but is that based on need or is that based on us only having $25,000? So should we, question then, comma, should we look at half of the next tier, which is let's say the fall or late summer? Should we look at allocating some of those funds for in abeyance or somehow to acknowledge some of those different needs?
I think they were talking to the policy here, so.
Yeah, well, through you, Madam Chair. So I will note that the decision to, or the recommendation to effectively reduce any request that falls over that certain amount in order to fund all applications. That's consistent with how the township has handled these requests in the past. And I will note that part of the reason why that recommendation was made is that the available funding was able to fund most of the eligible applications at a reasonable level. If it was to the point where applications had come forward, they had requested $2,500 and we would have only been able to provide them, say, $500 if we funded everything, then there would be a need to do some greater prioritization. This sort of practice has evolved out of a desire to make funding as widely available as possible. Certainly in terms of prioritization of the applications, I would suggest that if that is an avenue that committee would like to go down, then we will need to do another review of the grants policy to actually enshrine some prioritization criteria in the policy itself, because at that point, currently, that guidance is not in the policy.
Okay, I think at this point, what I might do is read the resolution so that we can have further conversation. And again, it is today, we're just giving a direction on the actual applications ahead of us. So moved by Mayor Kelly. seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that the 2024 Community Grants Program Funding Approval Recommendations outlined in Appendix 1 of Staff Report CED-2024-011 be approved. Are there any further questions or comments on the actual appendix? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that carries. Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll now move on to item 12A. And that was to focus our conversation on the delegation that we heard earlier today. Mr. Olsen, Mr. Reese, Lease, shoot. About the walking trails or the potential for walking trails. And I think one of the things I heard fairly consistently, I'm just trying to help shape our conversation here, was the desire or wanting to hear from staff thoughts on how we might be able to proceed with this. So with that, perhaps I could ask Mr. Moore to come up and chart a path forward for us, and then we can have a conversation around if this works or not.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, yes, I think if it's a desire of committee to explore the proposal further, staff would certainly be willing to analyze the map and the properties involved, et cetera, in further detail and report back to committee with a follow-up report with some of those details for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. So discussion. Are there any thoughts, Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you. I don't have a question as much as this. Okay, thank you. So through you, I want to speak to the governmental interface of this, because we heard about that throughout their presentation, and I would look to the mayor if I could. This is not unlike the water situation, the high water situation, not to try to commingle, but you know, it turned to the mayor with his influence of his office interfacing with Queen's Park. And so in that regard, you know, I don't think we as a township have an actual contact person who is that Queen's Park designate, if you will, which it's going to take some influence to suggest to the ministries that that they allow us on their properties and to develop them. And not unlike the water, you know, we kind of sometimes go, well, you know, we don't have any jurisdiction. Other times, while we're mad and we want to, or we're interested in developing. I wonder if you could speak to that. I hate to put you on the spot, but.
So maybe I can, did you want to speak, or is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
And then I think you wanted to make a quick comment.
Madam Chair, thanks. And my comments are germane to Councillor Zavitz's point. I thought would be helpful prior to the mayor responding. Couple of things I think that would be in the report. Firstly, the park classification system that Mr. Moore is working with a consulting team on developing will have criteria for identification of properties for parks and trails, and that'll be part of the vetting of some of the lands that we own. That will be a screening tool, if you will. Second point would be the notion of the level of service study. We'll be looking at how many parks or how many trails per capita or per ward kind of thing. So that service level will be set. We're at 10 now. Maybe we go to 50. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that's that's something that's going to need to be explored in his report. Third thing to your point is the notion of municipal use of crown land for that particular purpose. And typically the approach taken is a staff to staff conversation at the start. And if it's a solid no, then as you know from our world, then we kind of scale it up to the political level. And I'll let Madam Chair, Mayor Kelly may wish to follow up from there.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. And through you, I was going to actually address a couple of things before the provincial issue. I mean, there's more than provincial land involved here. If I understood correctly, at a couple of points, it crosses private property. That'll have to be dealt with. Somewhere along the line, there will have to be a place to park cars and allow people to take off on these trails. I noticed on some of the trails, if I wasn't misinterpreting the maps, The beginning and the end of the trail are a long way apart, which means some way to get back and forth, or park in two different locations and move the vehicles around. The ongoing maintenance is a big issue we're facing right now, and with a provincial jurisdiction with the park, with Hardy Lake and with the area down there. I mean, I think as recently as maybe yesterday, you received a response about cleaning up the provincial, where's your effort to clean up a mess? So it is a big relationship issue. But if the one truism, if we don't start driving this stuff, it won't get done ever. And so it has to be driven through relationships, staff to staff. It happens that I have been working to build a relationship with our MPP, who's our natural link to the provincial government. And in fact, because he's Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, he probably will have a lot to do with all of this. He has graciously invited me to attend Queen's Park for a session and a lunch with he and others. I think it's the 28th of this month in May. So, we're developing a relationship, but the simple fact is you've identified a real issue. There's a jurisdictional issue. We're sitting around waiting for somebody else to do the stuff you want done has proved completely hopeless, completely unsuccessful. We need to drive it. We need to step in front of it. But, we can't just confine, it's not just strictly a provincial / municipal issue. There's private property involved. And there's other issues involved, trail marking, maintenance, garbage collection, facilities to park, facilities to, washroom facilities. I don't know what you need when you're hiking, but it's a good question, a work in process.
Thank you. I see Councillor Kent is online, so I'd like to ask her first, and then I'll come back to around the table. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I am a huge lover of hiking trails, and I do think that the more the merrier, because it will reduce the problems we have with places like from overusage, Hardy Lake and the other well-used trails, particularly in that ward. Obviously it's tied into our level of service that we choose to deliver, but I do think it's important that we focused on this, that the trails need to be hiking trails, not ATV trails. He made that point. That's not the community that I think that we're looking to service right now. The snowmobile organizations run their own snowmobile trail questions. My question though, is I'm confused what the relationship of Mr. Olsen and Mr. Reese is if this is Crown land. They don't actually own this land. So are they just making a suggestion to Township that we look at this? I wasn't sure if I missed something or if I was confused. Anyway, that's my first question.
So thank you for that question. It's a good one, and they are not here for us to ask, but I can see Mr. Moore is nodding his head. So I think that is the approach, is that they're bringing forward the option and that perhaps there's a bit of private land involved, but I think that's part of the staff report that could come back, is that is to give us a more fulsome understanding of what the request is.
Right. But I think that all the complexities that the mayor mentioned are very, very important. The maintenance, the usage of existing trails, and how we reduce that, but also make it manageable for us on a long-term basis. But I am totally in favor of more. I think that's something the township needs, and I think they're all, as the history shows, we use what's available. The community, broadly based, all year long, uses these trails. So I'm a big trails proponent.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. What an opportunity for a trails committee. I just have to emphasize that all the trails that were built in this municipality were done by volunteers, including Hardy Lake, including the Torrance Barrens. And that the wealth of knowledge that was brought forward by committee members. So for instance, we had well, in fact, I wouldn't say he was a staff member. Maybe he was a staff member. I know he got $2,000 a year to spend on trails, with Brian Thompson many years ago. And he was a retired ministry professional. So a lot of what we're talking about today, we've done. Quite honestly, we did it with Hardy Lake. We did it with the Torrance Barrens. and had to go through all of those obstacles. We had private property owners being affected by Hardy Lake. That was dealt with. We shortened the trail, all of those kind of things. But those volunteers were a huge, important part of this municipality. And I would suggest that the municipality reinstates that volunteer trail organization, because in fact, we can answer some of those questions and those on the ground detail things. I find it challenging when we're going to hire someone to do this sort of thing, but they're missing the interaction with the public. They're missing what, for instance, how the locals feel when they get overtaken by thousands of people in one night, you know, and being blindsided, all the whole thing, like that's the feeling from the community. I don't know that we're necessarily gonna hire somebody that is actually going to yeah, sure, we can do another survey, we can do all of this other stuff, but those live people are there now and they're commenting on a regular basis and things. And so I really do think that this is an opportunity to redevelop that very important Muskoka Lakes Trails Association. It in fact was happening in the mid-90s when I was first involved. And so I certainly think that we can do that. But I also want to, I just got to say a name, because he makes a big difference in a lot of decisions I've made over the years and things. Was a person that lives in our township is Hap Wilson. Hap Wilson has mapped out Canada more or less for and paid by Canadian government and things, but he is in our backyard. He just recently finished 2 trail systems, yet privately, but they're going to be used by the public. But again, that person is in our backyard. And the same with, I would say we could even take it a stretch further, because we did try to do this and we just never, it was just a change of government or mayors or that type of thing. And if I was to say, Ian Turnbull was one of those developing members from was a trail system on lakes. So I'm just saying, there's so many possibilities, and I don't want to just restrict our future conversations just about when someone brings one idea forward, because there's been lots of ideas, and in fact our trails, our old handbook talked a lot about those possibilities and locations. And again, as I said, Ian did a trail system through the lakes, the canoeing, that type of thing. And so I think that's, I just hope we can broaden this more. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you. Through you. Again, I do believe that what Councillor Nishikawa is saying is absolutely true. And it may even be by ward, but I do believe that in Ward A, Torrance area, we have severe overuse of provincial parks, 2 provincial parks. And we have done if I could, we've done a really poor job of even interfacing. And again, this is where I was going earlier to the mayor's comments with Queen's Park. You know, we have a new director of public works. Maybe we can 2.0, we can, if that's the role, maybe it's not that staff person, but do we need a working group, to the mayor's point? Whatever we do in a more formal sense, to Councilor Nishikawa's point, needs to be at the appetite of the mayor. The mayor needs, as I understand it, needs to approve an actual working group. And I'm saying, I've sent the mayor a video of the aura on Aurora Borealis on Friday night, and it was the CNE at Torrance Bear. It's dangerous. I wish our fire chief was here to see that video. I'm not sure if he has or not, but it's in our township. It matters to our people, and yet it's dangerous and no different than Hardy Lake. So I guess my point is, maybe this is someplace where we should put a stake in the ground finally and actually take command of our parks and our trails and be serious about it.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is, because there was a specific request from a delegation this morning, and we are very much broadening the conversation. And I think we do have things in motion to help address the frustration that a lot of us do feel. I think we've tried to capture a lot of this. As mentioned at the beginning, I think there's passion here. So I just am looking to the group or committee now. Is there interest in hearing from staff some more fulsome details on this particular request at a future? So I will read a resolution that staff has drafted, and we can talk about it a little bit further at that point if we're okay. So moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Mayor Kelly. Whereas committee received a delegation regarding walking trails on Crown lands within the Township of Muskoka Lakes. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to review the proposal and report back on feasibility, potential next steps, and options for the township. So any other further comments, questions? Councillor Roberts?
After we vote on this, I do have a comment that I need to make
Okay.
on a point that was raised. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And the only, I will ask, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts, I will have one comment after you've made a comment. I have two comments actually after you make a comment.
Thank you. For the councillors that have come in this term, this was a big subject last year or last term about our ability to maintain the provincial parks. And it was this council's decision, based on good input, that we would be stepping away from it until we got a partner. So we have done, a good job at managing those expectations. The recreation master plan does speak to volunteers. And it's one of the items that Mr. Moore and company will be looking at. There's only so many things that group can do in 1 year. So I'm sure in the future, volunteers conversation comes up, because I do support the whole idea of volunteers in some capacity helping out, because citizens, we refer to citizen science on the water, but on the trails and stuff like that, there are people that would love to get involved. So we've made a conscious decision to walk away until we had a partner with the provincial government. If we're doing this, it appears that we're going to lead, as Mayor Kelly was saying, and try to get, if we decide to go with this, and get a partner and get an agreement that will be a foundation. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. And I think you said it quite nicely and succinctly. Part of what I wanted to add is the importance of us not disparaging actions that we've actually endorsed as a council. And we specifically did say and direct staff historically to work differently on facilities that are not really under our jurisdiction or ownership. And so specifically in Ward A, those are Hardy Lake and the Torrance Barrens, which are provincial parks. And so that is a caution, I would say, going into yet another arrangement where we don't have the same controls in place in order to make sure a trail like Huckleberry Rock is completely within our ownership. And so there is a bit of a difference, and I think those nuances need to be understood. But I would ask that committee just be reminded of the importance of not disparaging anybody in this process. We're here to make thoughtful, appropriate decisions. And just on the very last comment I did want to make, just the previous item, we just authorized a few $1,000s, I think, to go into a new trail system that is being, not new, it's getting revitalized, I think, at Aspen Valley Wildlife, which is up in this neck of the woods. So I think it's important that we do understand, as we are looking around the township, there are some private facilities as well as public, and then province. And I think that combination, as we look to having a good product mix throughout the township, is going to be an important factor. So, and in fact, not to use names, but I do believe Hap Wilson actually was the one who is doing that revitalization effort. So that's kind of exciting to see. With that said, we are now going to move on to community events. Is on calendar, is there anything specific? Councillor Edwards? Okay. Okay.
The chair. I'd just like to give a bit of history on Mr. Olsen. He has lived up here all his life. He owns property. He's done a lot of logging. As he said, he set up for a summer camp for one of the churches. He was going to donate property to the township. And they put him through so many hoops that his family said, you know, Dad, just leave it alone. And that, but he is community minded. And it's nice to see somebody come out and try and do something for the township. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Community events, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just what you had said on the calendar. So I'm going to, it's on the calendar, but no one will know it because it's the way it's listed. But I'll begin by saying it gives me great pleasure to announce that the Muskoka 2024 Raising Funds for Andy House is going to be kicked off this weekend. The Milford Bay community invites all of Muskoka to join in a summer fundraiser on behalf of Hospice Muskoka and Andy's House. The goal that the Milford Bay community are sponsoring, we're going to attempt to raise $30,000, which is a lofty amount, but we'll be promoting the value of Andy's House and awareness of Andy's House. The fundraising campaign will end with a community health celebration on Saturday, July the 27th, 11 a.m. at the Milford Bay Community Center. Hopefully by week's end, link on to the Muskoka 2024 Raising Funds for Andy House. Donation will be on the webpage of the Hospice Muskoka. We're working with them right now to get that on. And the community already has a few prizes in place for donations. If you donate, you get a ticket we're not selling it, but if you donate, we'll give a ticket for these prizes. So stay tuned. We have more to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other initiatives or Councillor Bosemore?
Thank you. The Minette Lions Club is having their spring car wash on May the 25th at Crowder's Garage. It's always a really fun event because there's lots of people there and they do a fantastic job on cleaning cars. So please drive by and get your car cleaned.
Thank you. And any other items? I believe the MLA Seedling Day is this weekend. Is that correct? It is this, isn't it Saturday, Sunday here?
It's this Saturday morning. I actually don't know if it's at the Legion or the community center, but it's right here somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's at our community center. So just a reminder for those that are here. Moving on now to item 12C. These are our district updates, and I would like to thank staff for bringing forward a slightly new approach to these updates. As you'll note in our agenda now, there are links to last month's district meetings so that each of us that are not on district have an opportunity in a more easily go back and look at any of those agenda items and ask our district councillors for questions. So the slightly new approach, we're trying things out in the spirit of continuous improvement. And so I think what I might do is ask the district councillors if there's any comment you want to make in advance on any of your agenda items, just let me know. And then I will turn it over to committee to ask any questions. So I'm looking now. Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I mostly want to add that and it is an extension of health services that we attended the opening of a new private facility in Gravenhurst for not long-term care, sorry, for retirement care. It has various levels of care provided, but it's very interesting private partnership along with the district partnership. And mostly I want people to look into it because you may not know that, for instance, your family member could be there or be financially enhanced to be there. You know, because one of the concerns about retirement living, whatever form you want to call it, is it's very, very, very expensive. But in fact, with the district being involved, there are, I believe 30 beds, Peter might correct me, but there are 30 beds, at least 18, I'm aware, that will be part of the memory care, which is a very, very important concept that I haven't seen made available in Muskoka for a long time. So this is in Gravenhurst, because Alexander, and again, it was a private initiative. And I will say that we're having ongoing conversations with would they consider coming to Muskoka Lakes. So,
Thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, the committee that I am on is the Engineering and Public Works Committee. There's one matter that was on the agenda that was presented that is of note for those of us in the township, and that is a commitment of roughly $3.25 million to rebuild the pavilion, I think you call it. It's not a pergola or it's a pavilion, the baggage shelter at the locks. It's 3.2 million, taxes in, a big sum of money. My recollection is that they're planning to get started as soon as the busy season is over this fall.
Thank you. Just before I come to you, Councillor Bosenworth, any other district councillors want to make a comment now? Okay, seeing no, then I will open up for questions. Councillor Bosenworth.
Thank you. And for Mayor Kelly, I am delighted to hear that. As I walked past there last night, I was wondering how many years has it been in this awful disrepair? And why has it taken so long? And it is a shame that assets that we don't own in our township gets not looked after the same, perhaps to the same level that we look after our own. And it seems a lot of money. Does it include some repairs to the dock?
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Yes, and through you, a couple of comments. It took this long because honestly, they struggled to get any one person to respond to the tender. They could not get anybody interested, and as it was, I believe it was a sole tender, a sole response. It's a local company. I don't want to say the name because I might have it wrong, but a local company right in Port Curling. And yes, it's right down into the ground. It's going to be taken out and replaced with steel pilings and a brand new superstructure. It was believed that after underwater work was done, that the superstructure or the infrastructure underneath the water wasn't strong enough to hold. You know, you're basically just wasting your time dressing up the top if you're not dealing with the bottom. So,
okay, thank you. Questions, Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mayor Kelly. I was very pleased to see this addition to our agenda, this detail that we can get into. And I have a comment under new business at the very end on that. But right now, Mayor Kelly, I'll probably come back to you. I will come back to you on the Lakeside Waste Collection Review report that came out. So I'll talk to you offline about that in the next little while. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I actually might not bring it back offline. I was going to ask the same question,
Okay.
just for everybody's understanding. I think you did talk about it a bit last month, that there are a few locations that have changed and that there's flexibility in this program, that if it's not suiting our needs, is Lake Muskoka in particular, the Walker's Point, and then Foots Bay, those two locations are no longer being offered in those specific locations.
is that a question?
Ish. I'll do the inflection.
All
Is
right.
that correct?
Yes. Yes, and through you, thank you for the question. I did talk a bit about it last month. I think I hit delete as soon as it was done, but let me try to remember. There were two locations particularly that I think jumped out. One was Foots Bay. Foots Bay will no longer be a collection point. The two nearest facilities, by my recollection, one is Spirit Bay on I think it's actually in Reese. Yeah, not, but it's on Lake Muskoka. The other one is up at Windermere. Neither very proximal to water access people on Lake Joe. I think it was clear, Director Steele said this is, or Commissioner Steele said this is our best effort. If it's problematic, you know, it will be revisited. They're going to maintain some flexibility. The unfortunate thing about those two facilities, the one in Foots Bay was only used by 7 families, consistently used by 7 people, literally. So it was a big investment in dealing with the waste of 7. The one at Walker's Point, and again, I don't want to be wrong about this. My recollection is that Walker's Point was no longer interested in hosting. And there was some discussion about East Bay, which is almost done with this business at all, with its own refuse bin, and Spirit Bay is sort of the alternative that's still in the market, willing to take it and willing to allow our equipment to sit on their property and receive the goods. So there are some gaps, and if they are proved unmanageable, we need to get some feedback from affected constituents so that we can take it back to the director and see if, for instance, we couldn't drop. It's not going to work very well, but we could perhaps put a truck at Appian Way. The docking facilities there are pretty weak. I think it's 1 boat at a time, if I'm not mistaken. So there's some challenges there, but we can come back if this proves unworkable.
Right, and I think just to with my question, the inflection that there is flexibility still as we try to navigate this. That was certainly what I heard in the conversation. So
That's correct.
thank you. CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just an additional point, when Mayor Kelly was speaking with district staff, there was an emphasis on the need to ensure that appropriate communication occurred to advise people that this was actually happening. There was an exclamation point put there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
I just wanted, and Mayor Kelly may not be aware of this, but I am meeting with James Steele in next week, actually, to discuss the East Bay and Walker's Point situation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions for our district councillors? Thank you. That worked pretty well, actually, I think. That's we'll look forward to our feedback on this afterwards, but I think this brings us to the end. New business. Thank you, Councillor Roberts.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I'll begin by apologizing to the clerk bringing a new business to table without first discussing with you. But it struck me at 4:30 this morning. Really, that's when I was trying to get through a lot of some other stuff. And it back to the, and maybe it's a one-on-one with the CAO and others. We get a lot of material to read on Friday. And then there's the weekend, then there's 2 days that we have to get a hold of staff if we have any questions. And I'm just wondering if some of the reports, such as the excellent fire master plan report that we got, and maybe perhaps some of the strategies, the communication strategies, if they could be published well in advance of the Friday. Is there any reason behind, those type of reports have to come out on the Friday and it's the first that we see them? Because it would give us great advantage to read them and not have to be loaded when we come to stuff like we received on the supplemental agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I can see Director Peroshi would like to speak. Well, we have 2 hands. I feel like I'm, okay, okay, Director Peroshi, then CAO Hammond.
Thank you, through you. So we understand that. And one of the things that we have implemented over the last few months in particular is when there is such a large document that it's just being received for information and feedback over the next month. So that did occur with a couple of reports in Public Works over the past few months. That did occur with the strategic or the communication strategy today. So that was something that we understood that you needed some time to digest it. So it was kind of actually giving members of committee an entire month to dive into it before it comes back for any type of decision. So that was something that we we've implemented. However, if you'd like to see something earlier, it's something that we can do, and we'd have to just make some amendments to the procedural bylaw to do that. But we could do that.
Thank you. CAO Hammond.
I was going to say the same thing. Like we recognize some of these documents are lengthy, and we're not asking for any decisions until you've had at least 30 days to consider the documents, along with, you know, the ability to submit commentary or potential changes. And so, you know, I'll defer to the clerk with respect to, you know, ideas to change the procedural bylaw to issue these things earlier. I'm not sure if that really would yield the results that we want in any event, but we can discuss that further. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Roberts.
Thank you for that education. It's just I'm concerned with the pending service level reviews that we're going to be doing. And I'm just thinking about the information that we really got to digest. And so if we get it and we have it a month to look at it, that's great. If we, you know, so we won't have to read it the whole thing that day, because there was a lot in a couple of those reports, or not, definitely one of the reports. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Hammond.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I think it's important to remember when we're dealing with those more complex projects, there's a variety of touch points as we go through the process prior to getting to the final report. So there, you know, we're building the information as we go along.
Thank you. And I think that also reinforces the importance of all these studies that we have been. Sometimes it feels like it's very laborious, but as it leads into this level of service study, I think we can feel comfortable that we've seen a lot of this information. It's nothing new. It's just that it will be all coming together. Like a big jigsaw puzzle is how I'm envisioning this. Councilor Nishikawa.
Sorry, I just wanted to somewhat extend that, but I guess it's been on my mind for a long time, but this is an opportunity to bring it forward. I find it interesting that district staff are available to us the half an hour prior to the meeting. That opportunity to ask the questions prior to the meeting, which may lead to not asking the question. It might be something very, very basic, just an understanding, but I'm wondering if we can start implementing that, because it might mean I show up earlier and actually, you know, have those conversations. Other than right now, I'm strategically thinking, I have 15 minutes, who can I nab? I'm just saying.
Yes, so an idea of some kind of a schedule for access to staff in advance of these meetings.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. CAO Hammond.
Madam Chair, staff are always available, you know, happy to, you know, have the senior team here prior to a meeting if it's a half an hour, et cetera. But, you know, our doors are always open at any point in time, and, you know, feel free to reach out, call. Many of you already do. Happy to continue that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I am going to read a resolution to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 11:43 a.m. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on Wednesday, June 12th at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the council chambers, municipal office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries, and we will resume at 1 p.m. for our council meeting this afternoon.
Yeah. You keep it safe.